everybody. Welcome to The Hard Truth Inside the Football Industry podcast with me, Philip Ideson, and Darragh MacAnthony, chairman and co-owner of English League One side Peterborough United. So, Darragh, you're back in England?
Back in England, pal. Hard truth, football fucking sucks. But yeah, back in England and the cold weather. I'm going to go out and buy a Christmas tree after this with the missus.
Nice.
And for those people freaking out, or the COVID freakers, it's there's no quarantine from UAE to England, and we did PCR tests on Friday, so everything's good to go. Yeah, it was great. Traveled back yesterday through Heathrow, and the family haven't actually been here since last Christmas, so it was nice. They missed their summer thing because of all the lockdowns. So nice to be back, and nice to get away from America and the toxicity and all the shit and the politics and the only to then jump into some politics over here in England. You know what I mean? Or whatever else. But yeah, nice to be back. Bar all the football results, but yeah, good to be back.
What's the plan for Christmas then? How long are you hanging around in the UK?
Probably here for a good few weeks. The family will go back on the 1st of Jan, and then I'll probably do a bit of business. I'll travel across Europe, probably come back in and out here to do stuff here football wise, and see what the window needs. And that's kind of the plan. So it's not just like a holiday for me. There is work tomorrow night. I'll be at the EFL Trophy game. I think our fans are back, so that'll be nice to see some faces. There won't be happy faces, but it'll be nice to see some faces.
Hopefully they'll be a bit happier at full time.
Listen, you'd like to think so, wouldn't you? So I think the young guns are out, so hopefully they'll show a little bit more bottle and determination and a little bit more freedom and enthusiasm, because that's what we need.
Yeah, so another, was it 2-0 at the weekend? You lost to Portsmouth?
Yeah, it was probably the easiest game Portsmouth's ever played. We changed formation. It wasn't great. Look, you can talk about formations, but at the end of the day, players have to go out and do the job, and we've lost confidence. Players have lost form. I said it earlier on Instagram, some big players, big hitters, they've lost form and they have to find their form, because you don't win 9 out of 10 or 8 out of 9 games, go top of the league, beat Hull away, and then go through a run where you're losing to Chorley, and then you're losing to AFC Wimbledon, and then you're going to Portsmouth and rolling over and getting your arse tickled. Why Portsmouth have the easiest win of the season. You can blame managers, you can blame tactics, but players have set their own standards and they've dropped way below. My only criticism would be, we built the squad, we recruited for a certain way to play, and we had players behind. If there were injuries, you had players behind. Now, granted, you would have to go with a younger player. It's what we decided, like left wing back would be, as an example, Butler and then Burrows. Right wing back would be Ward and Kanu. That's decided in the summer. That's not decided by me. That's in consultation with management. You play your formation, call it 3-5-2, or call it, what do they call it now? 4-2-3-1, or whatever it's called. Not 4-2-3-1. It's called like 3-4-2-1. Is that too many players? Yeah, 3-4-2-1 or whatever else, your wing backs. So, and we kind of went away from that. And I think sometimes you can make the mistake when you're not playing well. You start looking for things, you start searching, and you change things. And I think footballers are simple creatures. You've got to keep it stupid, simple, KISS. One of my favorite sayings. And it's like, look, yeah, a Burrows or a Kanu might get destroyed at a Portsmouth, but you know what? Have at it. You have to sometimes let the youth off the hook. You've got to try. You've got to put them in there. At least they'll have 8-9 players with them playing in the formation they know. And we've got to play our way into winning.
Yeah.
And we planted a flag in the sand in the summer. It was 2 ways we were going to play. It was this way, and then there was one other way, which we've gone to a couple of times this season. That was our kind of fall to formation and tight games or tough games. So I just said to the gaff afterwards, I said, look, sometimes football can be overanalyzed. Sometimes we do things that we don't need to do. He has the full support. You know what I mean? It's one of the safest jobs in football. And I said to him, the owners, myself, my partners, we want a young team. We want to bring true young players. Our youth team won 6-0 on Saturday. They've gone top of the league. We've got terrific young players. You don't want to kill them by putting 4 or 5 of them in, because that would kill them. But the idea being is you sample. So, if 2 of them have to start the game, great. And then 1 or 2 of them come off the bench and have 20, 30 minutes, great. EFL Trophy game, great. It's a great experience because they are good enough. But you'll never know how good they can be unless you give them some game time.
Mm-hmm.
So if you lose your left wing back or your right wing back, have at it and put the youngsters in. Let them play through. Let the rest of the team carry them and start winning. Let those young players bring some enthusiasm that maybe other players playing out of position won't. And I'm not trying to teach people how to suck eggs. And if Alan Swan's listening, I don't want headlines saying manager moans about formation or manager moans about players being picked instead. Players set their own standards. Do I think we'll continue like that? No, I'd like to think our players will, find their minerals again and start winning games, because that's what they've got to do. And we've got a big batch of fixtures coming up. And the quicker we get back 2, 3, 4 wins on the spin, it'll be forgotten. You know, I'm as angry as everyone else. You know, there's no point in reading social media because everyone's losing their shit. It's the same old crap. It's Peterborough every year. We can keep saying that, but most years it's different players, it's different staff. There is no curse. There is no mental thing with our players. It's just this is what happens in football at times. Players lose confidence. They have a couple of ropey results. As much as you get ropey results, you feel like you're not going to win again. You find a way to win and you go again. And that's just the way it goes. And if we want to be in a promotion race, we've got to find our minerals again. And we have to stick to what we know, what we set up to do in the summer. We have to stick to it. We have to believe, conviction of our beliefs, and get on with that. And that's what I said to the gaffer, who was probably very low after the Portsmouth game. I said, you know, you're an amazing manager. You've been around a long time. Ignore the white noise. Focus on what you're very good at. Coach the team the way you want to coach them. Play to the beliefs that you believe in, where we want to score more goals than the opposition.
Mm-hmm.
Setting up to try and nick a win or to stay in the game is not us. I'd rather lose 5-0. You know what I mean? Or, to go out and try and win 4-2, 4-3, 5-3. I don't want to see us rolling around like with one chance a game. Peterborough is always about the opposition goalkeeper has to make saves. And just recently, too many goalkeepers could have gone on a cruise holiday during a match. And that's not us. That's not who we are. So those players, and if they're listening, and quite a few of them do listen to this, I'd imagine, or so I'm told, look yourself in the mirror, have a word with yourselves and get back to doing what you know you can do. You don't batter teams and win away from home with top teams without having something about you. And I know we've got something about us.
How much is it on the player versus kind of the support of the club in helping players come back to form? Is form really on the player, it's confidence, they need to find something within them, or can you do something, whether it's in training or whatever it is, to help them?
A good football team can win a game with 2 players off form. A good football team cannot win a game with 5 or 6 players off form,
Mm-hmm.
and not 5 or 6 big players. And defensively, we won the Golden Gloves last year. We haven't changed our defence that much, but we look like rag arse rovers from set pieces and corners. So it could be little things like your defenders need to fucking get their shit together and concentrate and stop conceding stupid goals. You cut them out, it gives your attacking players the ability to, if they miss a chance, it's no big deal, they get another one.
Yeah.
In saying that, our attacking players are missing one-on-ones. So what that can be sometimes is confidence, but eventually the dam will break. 1 goes in, 2 goes in, 3 goes in. Wimbledon the other night, we've missed from 4 yards. That goes in, we win that game 3-4-5-0.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's small little things. So I can't say what they do in the training ground, but it shouldn't be a morgue. I would imagine the manager's trying to freshen them up. He's trying to lighten the load. He's trying to get them playing with a smile on their face again. Don't forget, we were locked up for a long time. Players should be seeing this as a second chance. So to see us playing the way we're playing at the moment, and the other thing as well, I'd say is, like I said about the Portsmouth game, to get players to play to their strengths, to get players back into form, sometimes you have to be stubborn and go, well, that's how we set out to play. And we're going to have to, there's no point in tinkering and meddling and playing a different way. Players haven't played yet, or putting players into a team where they don't belong in a position and you're trying to search for something. That puts them under more pressure. So say to the players, there's the challenge. You're going back to the way you're meant to play. I want you to play there. There's 4 or 5 games. Go win 3 or 4 of them.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. And that's how it's got to be. At the end of the day, we've got good enough players. It's up to them now to play their way out of this little shitty run they're in.
Yeah, I often wonder about kind of tinkering. That's what we've been doing at Bradford, at least earlier in the season, was, you're tinkering every week with different formations, and you're picking formations to try and nullify the oppositions rather than playing to your strength to go out to win. And, with all due respect to the players involved, you think maybe it would be better if we just have one way and be as good as we can in playing that one way. And maybe we can start tinkering around when you start to win. But when you try to do that from a position of weakness, it feels like it's just making the job even harder.
Repetition for me in life is so important. The way I brought my children up, the way I sold real estate, the way I did things, repetition, repetition, repetition. The human mind is like a computer sometimes. If you do the same things 10 times, you should get the same result 8, 9 out of 10 times. The same when I used to do sales. I'd look at my statistics in sales. I had a certain pitch and I could write my pitch down. Even when I worked in timeshare, if I did my pitch 10 times, I would get, in timeshare, usually you get 2 out of 10. I used to do 7 out of 10. And I did the same pitch. You would see my pitch book, and I have one next to me here. Over and over, same pitch, same pitch, same pitch. And I would get the same results if I did it 10 times. If I went off and did 5 different and 5 different, it would be a different result. It's the same in football. You're set up a certain way. If you know that's the way that's got you top of the league, if you know that's the way, like Tottenham at the moment, play counter-attacking football. Mourinho's getting criticised for having 29% possession against Arsenal. Who gives a fuck? Because the history books will tell you they won 2-0 and they went top of the Premier League. So he would look at it and go, if he keeps the same squad and plays 38 games and he plays that way, they've got a pretty good chance of being top three if not winning the title, if they did it. Now, if he loses 2 games and suddenly the pressure's on to have more of the football and change the possession, suddenly I guarantee over 10 games it'll be different. So repetition is key for the human mind, the mental side of things. It's the same in football. So yes, it's good to mix it up sometimes. Yes, sometimes if it's not working, you have to make a change in a game. But I'm not so sure before a game. And I'm not so sure multiple times in a small, like I said, we've played 16 games this season. We had 2 go-to formations and we introduced a third. For me, in 16 games, it's too early. Stick to what you're good at, stick to what you know you're good at. And if you're worried about, well, I'm missing my 2 wing backs, okay, we'll play the younger players because that's what you've got to try and do. That's what you're back to do. Our whole thing as a club is to bring great young players through. To fuck with everything else, we want to see young players graduating from the academy. We want to see young players thriving in the first team. And yes, it's tough to bring them in when you're struggling with league results. But at what time do you bring them in?
Yeah, there's never a perfect time.
Yeah, there's never a perfect time. And it's not like you're throwing 5 of them under the bus right now. So if it's 1 or 2 or 3, okay, so be it. We've been unlucky losing some key players, but everyone's going to have that same issue. So, when you have a good squad, and we have a good squad, you get over that and you just get on with it. I fully expect us to start winning again. And when we do start winning again, trust me, we'll win well. And we'll win in spats. So that's the key.
Coming up on, what are we? We're recording on Monday. When this goes out, you'll have already played, I think, but you've got the EFL trophy tomorrow night, Tuesday night, where some of the kids are going to get a chance again, I think, and you're going to get some fans back in the ground.
Yeah, we'll have some fans in the ground. We'll have a lot of teenagers playing. Be a chance. I'm not sure if the manager's playing any first teamers. Maybe a few of them should play to get that winning feeling back.
Play themselves into form.
Yeah, play themselves into form. Sometimes you do that. Then we have a home game against Rochdale on Saturday, game against MK Dons. Look, the games come thick and fast. It doesn't matter who you play. Sometimes you look at fixtures and go, we got AFC Wimbledon. We should be able to win that. It doesn't work like that in League One. And you don't always get what you deserve in football. Wimbledon had 3 shots on goal, scored twice, hit the post. We had 17 shots on goal. So football doesn't work like that. But I know one thing, if you keep playing like that and keep playing like that, like against Plymouth, we had loads of chances. Against Wimbledon, we had loads of chances. Yes, we didn't win. And then we went away from the way we played in those 2 games to something different for Portsmouth. So odds are you keep playing like that, you keep getting those 16, 17 chances, statistically, it will work.
I think about us, we're 23rd in the table, second bottom in the table, another couple of defeats. And, the depressing thing, like you said, was, you talked about it, the flip side, you get 17, 18 shots. The goals are going to come. I think we had 4 shots on target over the last 3 games. We had 0 on Saturday.
Not good enough.
Against 26. We had actually 6 shots, not on target. Oldham had 26.
Not good enough.
And that's how it's been. And it's like, you don't necessarily see a light at the end of the tunnel.
That's frustrating. Like, against Plymouth, I think we had 16. Against Wimbledon, we had 16. Chorley, we were fucking rubbish. Then we went to Portsmouth, we were absolute rubbish. At least when you go, for me, you look at Plymouth and go, fuck, we look great offensively. We just didn't score. Against Wimbledon, the goalie didn't make any saves, but Christ almighty, we had enough chances, like from distance, opening them up, getting into the box, hitting it wide. So we're not actually working a goalie, but we're actually getting in those positions. We had 67% possession. So I know what you're saying is when you have a run of games where you don't ever look like scoring, you think, when are you, like Arsenal are having it at the moment. They've lost 5, 6 out of 10, 11 games in the Premier League, but they don't look like scoring goals. And that sometimes is more of a concern. So if we played the next couple of games and again, we're not looking like scoring, that's a concern for me. That's something like, okay, what the fuck's going on here? So yeah, for you, I don't know what to say to you. You're in the lowest ebb you're at. For me, the last few results, really low ebb. I said to you, after the game in Dubai, I was in Dubai for 2 weeks with my family. We lost 3 or 4 games. It was horrendous. Sometimes the mental pressure on you after games, do you know what I mean? It's like, God, I look around at my family and I go, they don't deserve my mannerisms afterwards where I'm down or I'm not up. And there's only so much you can take in football for so long. You know what I mean? And it's like,
I mean, you take it personally.
You do. And you get hammered and whatever else. Like I said, social media is a cruel place when you don't win. Particularly for someone like high profile who's out there, like puts themselves out there. When we win, I have 3 comments on a Saturday night. When we lose, it's 28. So there's no balance sometimes with it. But I don't kick the ball. All I can do is, and I stand by, it was the best recruiting we've ever done. The rest is now down to the manager, the players, the staff. Myself, Jason, and Randy have done everything we can for the
Yeah.
football team. There's nothing else we can do. We can't put our boots on, as Barry likes to say, and go out and kick the ball. The players at some stage have to give you payback. And quite frankly, at the moment, they're nowhere near that.
Well, they got all the tools to do the job by the sounds of it.
They do. Otherwise, I'll take their chef away from them. Fucking League One players, honestly.
So let's go to the Premier League very briefly
Sure.
then. So you touched on Arsenal, 15th in the league. What's going on there? I'm already hearing about Arteta wanting him sacked, and it's been an interesting ride for them.
Yeah, listen, he won the FA Cup. I think he deserves more time than that to sack him. He's probably overdoing it. They probably play too much. They probably have more possession, more passes than anyone else, but they're not incisive enough. They're not cutting people open. They've got a confidence issue when they do create chances. I fully expect Arsenal top 6 by the end of the season. I think the owners will give him time. I think they know he's an intelligent coach. He's definitely got pedigree. But I don't think you should go out and fix it in January. I think sometimes like I've said there, you put a flag in the sand. The only way we would do business in January is if we sold a player. I don't want to go out and get 3-4 players. It's just, it can't be the answer all the time. And not for our club. And it's why we're now not forcing, but putting pressure on the academy needs to be used, because the answer can't always be sign player. Not in a pandemic, not where we are at the moment. So if I were Arsenal, I would come out and go, if we have to, we'll play a lot younger players, but we're backing the manager. And next summer, if we have to get rid of everyone, all the players, we'll do it. But the manager gets our full backing.
Yeah. And I hate to bring it back to us again, but
sure,
it was out in the paper this morning that, there's money there for Bradford to spend in the window. And it seems like we're putting all of our hopes on the window.
Can't do that.
The naivety is that, I think they thought that they'd be around the playoffs going into January, and they saved all the money to go and have a push to get promoted. And obviously that's not worked out for them. And so now you're putting you can say the future of the club potentially based on how badly it goes. But there's a lot of pressure on January, and that's when you have least leverage, I think, in the market, because everyone knows it.
Correct. When you're in a situation where you're there, you could lose Football League status. You might need to make 2 or 3 key signings, a spine. You might need a midfielder, a defender, and a striker. So you bring a spine in. You might want to bring characters in. You might want to bring people, give people a lift. Where we are with our squad, these players don't need me to give them a constant fucking lift by signing 3 new players all the time. Like I said, if we did business in Jan, it would be selling early and then looking at bringing forward summer signings to Jan to plug holes and deal with injuries. Do you know what I mean? Kind of thing. But for Bradford count, yeah, I mean, look, it's dark times, but they've got a very experienced manager. Now, no doubt he will get back in January. But at the end of the day, you don't want 7, 8, 9 players, because that's just going to be Harry Carey.
Yeah, because now they've all got to gel again, and now you march. You're in trouble. So anyway, we'll see how that goes. Back to the Premier League, I just wanted to bring up Sheffield United. Sitting on 1 point. Seems like second season syndrome.
No, Wilder's a brilliant manager. What he's done there has been tremendous. And there'll be all those calls for bringing a Sam Allardyce in, or bring whatever in, because it'll be the money. It's always the pressure of, you got to stay in the Premier League. But my only problem with Wilder would be his recruitment. He spent a lot of money on strikers, and I'm not sure they were the best strikers to do the business in the Premier League. And that was last year as well as this year. I mean, Billy Sharp was still scoring last year. McGoldrick was still scoring last year. I'm not sure, he spent 24 million on Brewster, 16, 17 million on Ollie McBurney.
For which I'm very thankful for, but he's not done anything. And it was like a surprise that he went there, to be honest.
I like Ollie McBurney. He probably needed another year in the Championship.
Yeah.
He's young. Brewster, I never saw. Yes, he scored for Swansea on loan last year, whatever else, but he was 24. Now, Liverpool get a lot of money for their reserves and their stiffs. I mean, no chance is he worth 24 million. You look at Ivan Toney. Could Ivan Toney have, with Chris Wilder and Shep as a target man, could he have brought them in? Could he have had them play differently? For a fraction of what they paid for Ian Brewster. But again, it's like we're in the Premier League. We must go and buy a Liverpool reserve for 24 million. I think if they win 1, they'll win 3 or 4. But they need to win quickly.
Yeah.
They're running out of time. And when you're down there and you're in a fight like what happened yesterday, they've already scored in the 90th minute. That's just so typical when you're like scratching and crawling for even the slightest bit of like help. You're thinking a great point, take the point, Leicester, move on. And then they get sucker punched.
Yeah.
And it seems to happen when you're going on a bad run or you're in the wrong end of the table. If they win the next game, they win 3 or 4. Look, they have a chance. There's some bad teams in the Premier League. West Brom are a bad team. There's a few bad teams in there. So I wouldn't bet against them. But from a
Mhm.
recruiting point of view, if they manage to stay in the Premier League, they really need to look at what they're doing on the transfer front.
And I think it's, you get in that situation. We were there in our second year. This is 20 years ago. But, by this time of the year, you already knew you were down. So it's really hard for the mindset to not think in that way.
The one saving grace they would have, and I've always said this, if you're a team struggling at the end of the Premier League to stay there, you should always buy with one eye on the Championship. For example, could you see McBurney and Brewster destroying Championship defences all day long? So you would fancy them with the squad they have. You sell one or two like Bournemouth did to try and cover the bills. They could storm the Championship if they got back down. But it's too early to talk about that. But that'd be the one saving grace. But I would hate to see Wilder lose his job because I think after what he did, he deserves the full season.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, because then you're just going to bring in a journeyman who's, what's the chances of him doing any better than what Chris Wilder has done?
Sam Allardyce ain't going to play overlapping centre backs, that's for sure.
So we got the bailout arrived. I say bailout with tentatively,
Mm.
because it seems that with all the best intentions, it's not a great deal of money, but it's hard to complain about getting some money in. League One, £375,000, League Two, 250,000, and then you can go and top up based on your crowd size.
Yeah.
And then there's another grant to dip into
Mm-hmm.
if you're really in trouble, but that comes with a million different strings. So you're not going to want to take that unless you're on the bankruptcy door.
It's 9 months of waiting for a bailout and negotiating a bailout, and you get near 400 grand. All the millions we've lost, the government's taken away from us, do you know what I mean? And whatever else. So you don't want to feel ungrateful, but you do, because that's not a great deal. When I was in Dubai, Sky, everyone was trying to get me to come on and comment, and I was just like, no, I'm on holiday. But in my opinion, no, the deal is nothing short of a disgrace. I expected at least 1 million, and then I expected then the government to throw in another 1 million. That changes things. That gets us all back to where we kind of need to be. But when you start adding up everything that's around, it's a fucking disaster. It's not good. And then to apply for help, and then it leaks that you're one of the clubs that applied for help, and then you can't sign a player in January. There's all the conditions on it because it's almost like if you're a well-run club, you're punished, whereas other people can go out and dip and get money. Yeah, I don't like it. I thought it would be better. I thought it was 50 million for 40 clubs. We'd all get near enough 1 million each.
Yep.
Then I would hope the government would be a little bit more with their bailout they've done for everyone else.
Yeah, we'll throw a bit more in as well.
Yeah, but 300-400 grand now, that's not going anywhere fast. There will be trouble ahead, in my opinion.
On that note, do you think all 72 EFL clubs are going to make it to the end of the season unless there's more help that comes in?
No, unless the tiers change and they get more fans in, now there's going to be trouble. I think someone will have to sell. Some big hitters will have to sell the clubs. There could be dicey times. There won't be as many as before because there is an injection of some money and there is some fans back, but it's not enough fans back. Hopefully these gobshites do away with their nonsensical tier shite. Let's talk COVID for a second. California's, as you know, has had one of the most strictest lockdowns for 9 months. And yesterday they had 30,000 cases, which is a record. So you tell me, all these tiers and lockdowns and everything else, are they really doing the job, Phil? Show me the science and the statistics to back it up.
What's very interesting is in California how, they're going into local lockdowns, and, we used to live there. For listeners, we got family that live there. And people are rebelling against it, and the police are coming out and saying, we're not going to
enforce it.
Enforce it is the word.
Love
we're not going to enforce it because, people going to sit in an outdoor restaurant, that's not where the super spreader events are. If people are holding a party for 200 people in their apartment, that's where there's some trouble.
Golden Boy Newsom, his new one now is, it's not about infections anymore. It's not about deaths. It's not about hospitalizations. It's now about actual ICU numbers. So now anyone with an 85% ICU number is in lockdown. What he's failing to tell you is, and I looked because I'm a data guy, all the ICUs this time of year in California are at 90 to 92% with flu season. So now we're just gone past the realm of any kind of sense whatsoever. There is no scientific sense to it, considering what a yearly ICU percentage number is. Considering now with the new therapies, the Regeneron that they're giving requires hospital stays for people to get it because it's IV given.
Right.
So there's more people going into hospital to get those therapies that aren't actually ill, but they're getting them early on, but you got to stay in hospital for 2 days to get it. Hence why there's a lot more hospitalization. So, like I just said to you there, they're testing 2 million a day in America. They're getting 200,000 cases because it's double the amount of testing they're doing. California's been locked up for 9 months, one of the worst places for lockups or lockdowns, and they've got record numbers every day. Thus illustrating again, your lockdowns are a lot of fucking nonsense.
Well, this tiering, going back to that for the football, and so we had Harrogate Town, 2,000 people, which great for Harrogate. I don't want to diss on Harrogate because great for them. They had 2,000 people in a 4,000 stadium.
Yeah,
We Bradford are 22 miles away and can have 0 people in a 26,000 seat stadium.
it's nonsense.
Now, nobody probably wants to watch the crap we're serving up right now, but that's kind of beside
They
the
do.
point.
They do.
We'd still be there.
They do.
Doesn't make any sense. You got nobody in St James's Park, 56,000 or whatever it is. It's just insane.
Man United, 76,000.
Yeah.
Anfield last night, I watched 2,000 people, out of 60. And by the way, they're all cramped in one stand, aren't they?
Mm.
Again, you got like 4 stands in the stadium. It's like for us the same. He threw us a bone again. It's a couple of crumbs because obviously they can see people are done enough. I don't know how government politics work in the UK. How do they get rid of the Prime Minister, Phil? Because they're going to get to the stage where I think when your next election, Labour's a shoe-in now.
You can have like all these votes of no confidence that they put through Parliament.
I would imagine there's so little confidence left. And I'll give you an example. We get in last night from the airport. We drive through Weybridge, lovely little town. And I counted my missus who were driving by. 13 out of 36 commercial units, shops and whatever else were all gone, empty. Mm-hmm. 13 businesses gone from a town in Weybridge. God knows what that's like in the north and gone across the UK. A generation has been lost in businesses. Yes, I understand all the death. We had it in Florida the other day. There was, I think, 100 people died. 92% were over the age of 80. God bless their souls. One was 105. But it's like, you look over here and you look at the high street and you look at businesses and people have lost everything. And you're going, what are they fucking doing? Here's a really fascinating thing for you being in Dubai. Because obviously you're out there. It's great to see different cultures, how they handle it. They can't handle the vid. I'm calling it the vid because I watched Chris Rock. He did a new show on Netflix. And I love, not Chris Rock, Kevin Hart. I love Kevin Hart. And he did like a comedy show from his house. And he had the vid. So he's speaking about having the vid, the coronavirus, So we're in Dubai. And I follow one of the local media companies on social media in Dubai. And up pops the ruler of Dubai at the start of November getting a vaccine. So there he is, he's getting a vaccine. He's already vaccinated all the healthcare workers. He's already vaccinated like frontline workers. The police and all airport staff are next. And then people over a certain age are getting it before Christmas. Guess where the vaccine's from?
Yeah, you said China, right? It's a Chinese vaccine.
Correct, China. Yeah. But no one's writing about that in England.
No one's even heard of it.
No one's writing about it in America. I mean, China have probably had it for 9 months. And I'm all for it. Like, I had a row with like somebody who worked for me yesterday. Like, I'm not taking the vaccine. I'm like, well, listen, you can stay at fucking home and wear a mask indoors. Yeah, I'm taking it. All these vax people losing their shit about a vaccine. We will not get our normality back unless we just fucking take it. So the quicker we get all the older people taking it and everyone over 60, and I like the UK's plan, they've jumped ahead of the queue. Brilliant for them. The idiots in America and the FDA are holding it up by 3,000 people a day are dying. Get the fucking thing out. It's 94, 96% efficacy. Let's get it done. Let's just get it done. If we can all run out and get the vaccine and we get all these people over 60 with a vaccine, you won't see as many people in hospital. There won't be as many deaths. Piers Morgan, the press can't write about it anymore. There won't be all the headlines. People will get normality back. And those people who lost their businesses, God bless them. Because like seeing what I'm seeing on the high street, Phil, God knows what it's like in Bradford and areas where you live. But it's horrendous seeing it. It really, really is sad. And again, it's a generation of lost like entrepreneurs who like worked in their own businesses for years and who were perfectly healthy people who would have no chance, 99.99% chance of living, who've lost their livelihoods and their families and then coming back from that. So the other side to this tale, I've always said, will be told in time. It's really, really frustrating, isn't it?
Unfortunately, you're kind of having to legislate for the, I pause before I use this word, but it's like the stupidest, if you will. So there's obviously a portion of the population who are not helping things.
Sure.
And so all the legislation is to try and so-called protect everybody against those people. And it's not necessarily, is it the right thing to do? No.
Sure.
But they don't help.
No, they don't. But what doesn't help is the leaders either and what they've taken upon themselves to make draconian rules. You speak about stupid people, you're right. But the most stupid people throughout this have been world leaders and the way they've handled it and the way they've taken a virus with the percentages we know and locked all fucking millions and billions of innocent people who never had any chance of having an issue with the virus and taking away everything they have. There is no one size fits all, but what they've done is absolutely wrong. And, I debate this with my wife when we have a drink because I even said to her, I said, look, looking back now after 9 months, where pretty much everyone's been locked up and everyone's lost all of these things. When you see the real numbers, and this is what drives you mad, you never see the real numbers till weeks later. But if you see the real numbers, the average age is like 78, 80 years old, God bless them. who are dying seriously of the virus. If we'd really done it properly and kept them safe to lose a vaccine, instead of putting everyone away, if we kept the people who are actually still dying in care homes, still dying I don't know how these people are getting infected and what they're doing, because like my dad hardly now goes out. He's just until he gets the vaccine, he's pretty much low profile. So I'm kind of asking, how are people still dying in care homes? How are they getting it? How are these care homes not tested? How are people going in not tested? Because if we'd really done it properly and looked after them, well, 99% of people who will never die from the virus were allowed to go about their normal life, what would this year have looked like? Would that have been the right way to do it? And I know someone who's listening who's probably 78 years old is probably saying, oh, fuck you, you're not locking me up and blah, 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 blah. I understand that. But look at all the other people who have been locked up who never have an issue or never will have an issue with this virus. So I don't know what the perfect answer was, but I'm sure it wasn't locking all of us up together, because it's just not work, Phil. It's not work. And by the way, the UK is open again now, and infections are going to go through the roof again, because guess what? That's what happens. Lockdowns don't work. It just doesn't work.
When people are in close proximity, you're going to have that.
Yeah, even if they turn around and said, you know what? After Christmas, here's what we're doing. For 60 days, over the age of 65, we're really encouraging stay at home. We look after you. We get you the vaccine. Watch the numbers drastically fucking drop, because they are the people who are dying, Phil. When you start looking through the real numbers, they are the people who are dying. And it's horrible to see that we're not actually stopping that. And everyone can blame, oh, well, because people aren't wearing masks, and you said stupid people and young people are going to have partying. You're absolutely right. But if you're 60 or 70 or 80, what are you doing hanging around a young person?
Yeah.
How do those young people infect you? For God's sake, what is going on? This argument that will go on forever. It's so frustrating. Vaccines, let's all take them.
Talking about politics and football, we have good old Brexit. Now we have new overseas player rules that came in last week.
It'd be good for us.
It seemed like it was. So teams aren't allowed to sign anybody from overseas under 18, points-based work permit system for the rest, maximum of 6. I think it was just under 21s, a maximum of 6 that you can buy. So between 18 and 21. Essentially no more stockpiling of overseas young players.
Yeah.
Does that increase the value of English young players?
Yes, it helps. If you have a good academy, it will certainly help in getting better transfer fees and better deals for the younger players, because instead of Chelsea going out and buying a load of players from Europe or Brazil or wherever and parking them in Belgium or parking them elsewhere, they're going to have to be a little bit more talented in how they recruit now. And there will be a lot more academies lower down that'll get, raped and pillaged, dare I use those words, do you know what I mean? Unless they've got a good category. And that's why we're trying to get that Cat 2 as quick as we can. Like at the moment, we've got a couple of players that Prem club's going to take. So we're trying to negotiate deals as best we can. But the value of those deals for these 15-year-olds or 14-year-olds, like 150 grand. If we were Cat 2, it'd be more like $1 million. So that's why it's so important to get to that level. It's different when we have a 17-year-old who signed a pro deal. We can obviously get a lot more money for them because they're pros. And obviously, we've got those players that Premier League clubs are trying to buy now. And with this new rule coming in, hopefully it will drive the prices up, which will help us do better.
How does and this is maybe an obvious question that I just don't know the answer to, but
sure,
why does the categorization of your academy impact what you can charge or what the value of the players are if the Prem come in?
Under the rule we did when we got more solidarity money, it was agreed there was a tier system. And it was basically, if you went to a tribunal, they do an assessed value on a 13 or a 14-year-old, how long they're with the club, blah, 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 what stage they're at. And it was like 75 grand going up to 150. And then if they made 5 appearances, X amount more, you get a sell on. And then each category you go up and in, you get more in that tier. And the reason being is because you invest more. So we as Cat 2 would invest double the amount. It would be like, I think, over £1 million. Cat 3 is $500,000. You go up to the top category, it's like 3 million a year gets put into academies. You get 3 million in funding and you have to put in 3 million. And as you go down the categories, it's different amounts. So what we're trying to do is by going up in category, we get more funding and we have to put more in, but we get better coaches. We can pay our coaches better. We get better scouting. We get better players we can recruit locally. Having that category might persuade a player not to go to Leicester or to Norwich's academy and come to our academy because it's, also you got better facilities. So the payoff to that is if somebody does get, like we've got a young England goalie that every club in the country wants, for the most we're going to get probably a couple of $100 grand. In another category up, we probably get near enough 750. That makes a big difference. Do you know what I mean? And, I hate peddling and selling 12, 13 and 14-year-olds. You know what I mean? This is what COVID's done to us. I'm joking.
Let's say you sell that young kid, basically.
Yeah.
Do you have the ability to build in, or is there clauses based on his performance, or is it just it's a cash lump sum?
You get a cash lump sum, and then you get a percentage when he signs his first pro deal.
Okay.
Then you get another amount when he makes his debut, and then you have a sell on. So the only way would be, if you went all the way to the first team and he then got sold, and say Brighton bought you a young player, and then Brighton sell him like Ben White. He came, let's say, from Peterborough's academy at 11, and then he went to Liverpool for 50 million. Hopefully, there's 15% in there, as a sell on that you're going to get paid down the line. But unfortunately, most clubs don't have 9 years to wait for a player to go through puberty, grow hairs on his arse cheeks, and go out and get a move. So it doesn't always work like that, but that's kind of the idea. And obviously, then if it's a higher category, you get more. But look, that's the way it is. Everyone's adapting. We have to adapt like everyone else. You know what I mean? We went big this year, budget wise, everything else. But luckily, we've sprinkled in there a lot of young players. So if changes need to be made, or we need to reassess or redo whatever, we've got some really, really good young talent in there.
All right. Well, I'm going to leave it at that. We're going to come back in a moment or two with some listener questions. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Hard Truth podcast. We're going to go straight into some listener Q&A. And we're going to start with a question that we got from Daniel. Daniel says he wants to ask, what do you make of the situation with Jack Marriott? He says he's a brilliant player with bags of potential, but hasn't really been given a good run since leaving Posh.
Yeah, he went to Derby, and he was Lampard's high, number one target. Then they signed Waghorn, which surprised me. And then he got in, he played, he came out. We saw him come good in the playoffs where he destroyed Leeds, scored some big goals in the playoffs, got him to the final. Should have played in the final. Lampard went with midfielders up front instead of him. So it was mad. I know Lampard and his assistant dug him out quite a few times, and that really got to him. I was spoken to the player. Then he had injuries, which is very unlike Jack, because he played for us. He played 45 out of 46 games. The only game we left him out was the final one, so he didn't get injured. So he was always fit. So then he was picking up silly injuries because his game is based on pace. He was getting, I think, muscle injuries. So I spoke to him in the summer. He was trying to get a fair run at Derby. He went into the Derby team. They weren't at the best of time, as you can see, with the results Derby have had. He's gone to Wednesday. It hasn't happened. I mean, Jack's still only 26. If we were promoted, I'd probably try and go and sign him.
Yeah.
I still believe with his ability, there's a player in there. And with his pace, there's a certain way you need to play that suits Jack Marriott. I'm gutted for him, but he's still young enough to go again. And I know he's got the burning desire to do well.
Now, for those that don't know, who aren't Posh fans, who know, like me, I know of Jack Marriott. I know that he was banging him in there for a little while, but I don't really know the backstory. It seemed like he came in, he did a job immediately, and before you knew it, he was back out, and that you sold it.
We knew what we were signing. We paid I think 300 grand from 400 grand. It was his game's all about pace, off the shoulder, and we played to that. He won the Golden Boot by a mile. He was the best player that year in League One, but Bradley Dack won the award because we weren't in the playoffs. Jack scored some unbelievable goals. He was Mr. Consistent, never put a bad performance in. He was fully fit the whole season. Then we went to the summer. We sold him to Derby for a good few million because we played Villa in the Cup and he destroyed John Terry.
Right.
Scored a couple of goals. And I think John Terry told Frank Lampard, if there's one player you want to buy, make him your striker. So, yeah, he's still young. He's still got a chance. I know it's not gone well from the last couple of years, but he'll come again.
All right, we've got a question from Peter, and Peter asks, I don't really know the context of Peter's background, but his question is, how does one become a scout? How can you get your foot in the door into a scouting system?
Well, I'll give you an example. I had a young guy called Ben. I've got two Bens working for me, actually. I shouldn't give their names away. But one of them, the newer one, Ben, was emailing me every week. He's a Bournemouth fan. So he would email me young players, and this is no advertising for people to start emailing me, by the way, because I'm full in that department with my two young scouts. And he had a knack for describing players. He had a good eye. Obviously, recruitment is a big part of what I do.
Yeah.
So I decided to give him he worked for free for me for a while,
mm-hmm.
and did a bit of scouting, got into it, and that's how he did it for me. So anyone out there, write to your local club, send them reports, give them an idea, tell them that you're happy to do a month for free to prove your worth. And then obviously if you become a scout, you get your petrol paid, you get a little fee, and you never know. I know who was it? The guy at Norwich, was Stuart Webber. He'd start at summer. I think he worked for my manager summer, and he ended up going in doing a really good job. Now he's like he runs the whole club, technical director. You've no idea where they started. They started at the very bottom, and they worked their way up. So it's not impossible, but you need to really put work into football. You need to go all over the country, know games, know players, know what to look for and what not to look for. With my scouts, I give them a bit of there's a certain sheet they've got to fill in. There's certain things I've asked them to look at that they kind of went, oh, that's interesting, that they never thought about looking at a player before warm-ups, before a game. I get my scouts to go into the crowd, sit there as fans and pick brains of fans about a player. Sometimes you can find out a lot about a player, and that's how we do it. Saturday night after we got beaten by Portsmouth, that's how I spent an hour. I was reading scout reports, just to get my mind off that result and look to the future. So, yeah, it's what you got to do. The little things you do. Work never stops, right? And this morning I'm analysing stats and data that I've got from the last 4 weeks. So that's a big window to the soul for me as well.
Yeah, I'm kind of embarrassed to say now, but in the 90s, I would write letters in those days to the manager.
We all did. When I lived in Spain when I was 15, I wrote letters to Liverpool. All right, I've still got some of the notes writing about players they should buy. We've all done it as kids. Do you know what I mean? Like I was 14, 15. We all did
That's
it.
about when I was doing it. I got letters back from Lenny Lawrence on these players that I was telling him about.
It's really funny. When I went into real estate, true story, I was 20. I wrote Simon Jordan a letter and I sent him a whole proposal on buying real estate in Spain. And to my astonishment, his secretary rang me and said, Mr. Jordan really appreciates you sending the letter and, not going to do business this time, but, thank you very much. And I thought, well, fair play. Yeah, he didn't ring me himself, but like he was this football club owner. He had a lot of money. He was very wealthy. He was always coming to Spain. Funny enough, I think he ended up buying the places I sent him, but he just didn't use me. So, which I tell him now as a joke, do you know what I mean? But that's just funny. As young people, you do that. Even I did that when I was younger. Do you know what I mean? So you do what you got to do.
Yeah, my crowning joy was thinking that I had something to do with the signing Darren Moore, who at the time was like some 18-year-old from Torquay who came to play with us in the Premier League. That's the extent of my scouting background.
Classic.
On the topic of scouts, is there a typical setup in League One or League Two? I know that you're not the typical in how you go about it, but is there a typical League One or League Two? They'll have a chief scout and then they'll have a bunch of like part-timers, or how does it kind of work?
Sometimes. Previous managers I've had, I've always had family members who do their scouting for them, like chief scout, and a couple of them like we've had on payroll at the time and whatever. Managers will always have go-to scouts they use. You don't call them chief scouts; they're just scouts. They get their petrol paid, they get paid a fee for going to the games. You have Tottenham, you got David Pleat, who is so trusted. Daniel Levy trusts every word from him. So David will go out and he will be your Dele Alli spotter, your Ivan Toney spotter. He goes to loads of our games. I'd be amazed if I didn't see David tomorrow night at our game with the young players against West Ham. That's what people like him do. And David Pleat's not a scout. This is a formal manager, technical director. He's someone you respect and listen to, and he still enjoys going to watch games of football. Every club's different. I'm not sure now with COVID, we got rid of any kind of. My manager still had a couple of people he'd use outside of my guys, and we kind of stopped that because obviously we didn't have the money to spend on it, and cuts needed to be made. So I'd say scouting took a serious dump in the summer because of the pandemic.
Do scouts usually work for multiple clubs?
Yes, they can do. Yes, some of them, some companies are out there who will scout for loads of clubs at once. I was reading in The Athletic the other day, really, really good publication. I like some of their articles. They did a whole thing on like Man United and Liverpool scouting system. And it was fascinating the amount of scouts Liverpool have all over the world. Man United, hundreds of scouts all over the world, and they have a central database and a system. And it's just, for me, it's educational. You learn things all the time. It's yes, we've got a great recruitment policy, but I can still learn and pick up tips.
There's probably things you can do to replicate that at a fraction of the cost.
Absolutely. So you're never too old to learn new tricks.
Yeah. Now, I often hear about managers relying on agents as scouts. So they'll go out directly to agents instead. Like, to me, that seems like a bit of a conflict.
My pet hate. Every manager I've had has been the same. I love my gaffer at the moment, but he'd be the same. He'd have certain agents. A lot of players' names will come up and you always go, Jesus, that player from the same age and that player. Every manager is the same. Call it lazy. They've got so much on their plate that sometimes they'll have an agent ring them and go, Darren, I've got 5 players, this. And sometimes the players are good. You can't knock that. Sometimes it's the same agent you use. I'm not going to lie. I have an agent I've used for quite a few deals, who's very, very good, who seems to always have the same young and hungry players I like. It's not because he's that agent. It's because it's coincidence sometimes. I've always said Gary Monk's agent's got to be the best agent in the game. He's had more clubs than Tiger Woods and some very, very good clubs. And I said, what an agent he's got,
Yeah.
to keep getting him the same gigs over and over. So it's a part of the game. And a lot of managers, sometimes it can be too much of a conflict of interest where, you'll hear stories, and my manager's never been like that, where you'll hear stories where an agent basically has got 9, 10 of his players at the club, and that's too much.
Yeah, that's that's what I hear a lot is, we went out to we spoke to 40 agents this week to
Correct.
get the name out about what we try to buy, and it, there's not that much independent thought. To me, that's where the conflict comes in, because they're just going to be repping their own people, not the people who are best for your club.
Correct.
All right, let's go into a couple of business questions. So Jeevan asked, so he says he's a second-year law student at the University of Warwick. The question, and it's probably a hard one to answer again without a ton of context, but what do you think are the most valuable degrees to have in the world today? So I'll put another way, are there any particular degrees that you would prefer your kids to do?
Well, Javan, I've never met a poor lawyer. So congratulations, you've made it. It's like I've yet to meet a lawyer who's skint. I would love one of my daughters to be a lawyer.
Yeah.
100. I said to my daughter, who does want to be a lawyer, because obviously my lawyer is a female lawyer, is brilliant. I've said, look, you need to meet her, you need to speak about it. She'd love to spend time with you and show you that world. You need a language, because I'd love my kids to be in corporate law. I said you need to learn Chinese, Mandarin,
Yeah.
because you put that in your CV, you're getting jobs all over the world, and you're probably going to get like high 6-figure jobs when you get out of a good college. So nowadays, it's really important, I think, to have good degrees. My partner Jason's got more degrees. They've had hot dinners, PhDs. He's a doctor. He studied at 3 different universities. He's obviously, bordering on genius. Randy, if he's listening, is probably laughing when I say this, but Jason's that academic. Some people are built academically. I'm not. I could have gone and got a degree, but I didn't have the patience at the time. By the time I'd finished my degree, he would have been 23, and I'd already started my business then, and I was on my way to making a lot of money. So different times, different horses for courses. I think nowadays everyone needs to get some form of a degree. I was speaking to my kids yesterday about you do a bachelor's, and then you can go on and do a master's afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously if you're doing law, if you're doing medicine, sometimes you got to go to another finishing school after that.
Yeah, going to do your PhD.
Yeah, the more you can educate yourself and you can afford to do that whilst probably having to do work and have jobs, I think it's really, really important nowadays, because competition's fierce. And particularly if you want to be an accountant or an architect or a lawyer, or, look, if you want to be a sales guy like me, not necessarily, but, if you have a divine talent, IT, creative design, there's so many things now that you probably educate yourself better by going to a good college and then on to another, and do an undergraduate afterwards, if that's the right way to call it, or whatever else. Do you know what I mean? Or a master's on top. So yeah, I think big investment in yourself.
Yeah, it's kind of table stakes. If you want to go into the corporate world, it almost doesn't matter once you've got onto the first ring of the ladder, but you're not going to get onto the first ring of the ladder without it.
No.
And I always would encourage people just to get what they can while they can, because as life moves on, it gets harder and harder and harder to go back and invest in yourself. As you get more commitments and you're earning more money, it's hard to give that up. So if an opportunity presents itself, do it.
100%. And I agree with you. I think the more you can educate yourself and better yourself, I think it's well worth doing, and do it early. So you're not the mature student at the party.
No, the other thing is, this is something that I don't have, but I would definitely encourage my kids as they're growing up, is something related to coding or
Yes.
relating to,
Yes.
tech in some way, shape or form.
Yes. I got my son to do the coding in high school, and he went into the advanced level, and he was in bits. It was so complicated because he'd never done it. But I agree with you. That's brilliant. Well said, IT. If you've got any inclination to that way of the world, if you can get into coding early and you take to it like a duck to water, you're going to write your own ticket in Silicon Valley.
And even if you don't use it, it's not because you may have a desire to be a career as a coder, but once you have that, because automation is essentially going to be,
correct, way of the future.
That's where the money's going. To understand, have the mindset of how it all connects together and what the art of the possible is.
1,000,000%.
All right, let's go with last question this week, an anonymous question, which is, if somebody's approaching you to invest or to buy one of your businesses,
sure,
or maybe a business that you've already invested in, that you're an investor in rather than an owner, what kind of criteria do you consider as to think, You know what? Should we be taking this money? Should we even be entering into a conversation?
A tough one. Depends on the business. Depends if you had an exit plan. If I invest in a business, I'm always looking at 3 years to get out, and get paid. So if it's at the end of that cycle, okay, it's time to negotiate. If somebody's courting you early on, you're doing the right thing. You've invested in the right business, and it depends who your partners are. I've got this new electric bike business. I've launched them. We're launching in January. We've just done our video shoot with Amy Hart in London, Love Island girl. And that was a great video shoot. It looks great. The product looks great. And again, I would expect within 24 months to have a sellout on that. But if someone came to us in 6 months and made us an offer we couldn't refuse, so like I said to you before, you get an offer you can't refuse. Sometimes you've got to take it on board and look at it.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can stay too long. Early on in my real estate company, I told you within 3 years, Sendent, one of the big companies back then, walked into me at a property show and offered me high 8 figures. And I laughed and turned it down because I was convinced I was going to be a billionaire. Little did I know. So, again, I would always say, pause, have a moment, have a think. What is your goal? Have you got a figure? We're all prostitutes. We all have a figure we'll do things for. What is your get out figure? And if you have a get out figure and someone comes in early on, even if it's on day one, sometimes you got to do the right thing and take the figure.
I see it's a journey as well. So, you could have the opportunity to take the money off the table, which is going to set you up. Then you don't need to hit the ball out of the park on the first business.
Correct. Absolutely.
Get yourself financially secure. Go again the next time.
Don't get greedy. Don't go past the point of sale, and don't overstay your welcome.
Yeah.
So, there's some key points to when you're building a business to sell a business. And, follow some rules. And obviously get your worth, what you think it's worth. If you can hit those 3 or 4 things and tick the boxes and write it down, your pros and cons, off you go, do a deal, move on.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap up there for the week. I do want to just encourage people. We didn't mention it last time out, but still do continue to email us about if you have interest in the business podcast, the kind of the mastermind program that we're going to be putting together next year. There will be a page that ultimately goes up on the website, which will make it really easy for you to do and just pop in your email address.
Definitely.
But for now, just email it to us at contact@hardtruthfootball.com.
And some background to this is it'll be educational for people who are new to business, people who've been in business, people who are looking for advice, people who are looking to, make their fortune. Can't guarantee that'll happen. But you're going to hear from people who've run successful businesses and done good things in life. And we think it'll be quite successful. And if you want to sign up for that, if you're up for that, email where Phil just told you. And, you'll get first access to it when it comes out.
Yep. And any questions you've got as well, same place, contact@hardtruthfootball.com, or the website, which is hardtruthfootball.com/contact. And there's a form right there. So all the information comes straight to us. I got the questions that came in a bit late today that are going to be in next week's episode. So keep sending them in.
Great stuff. Thanks, guys.
Until next week, take care.
All the best.